Welcome to the Walled Garden Podcast, the flagship podcast of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society, a global community of philosophers and students sharing the philosophical path together. If you'd like to learn more, just go to thewalledgarden.com. We welcome your participation in our community. But for now, we hope that this episode serves you well. Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of the Walled Garden Podcast. Today I have a very special conversation to share with you. I'm speaking with Rocco Jarman. Many of you will probably have heard our previous conversations on both my show and also on his show, the Eyes Wide Open Life podcast. If you haven't heard those conversations, if you don't know how we came together, I was actually introduced to Rocco through one of those services that gets me on other podcasts, whether it's to promote my works or just to have meaningful conversations. And there was alignment between what I was sharing and what Rocco's show is all about. And so I was introduced to Rocco, and just within the first moments of our conversation together on his podcast, we just realized that there was just glorious synchronicity between not only the kind of work that we were pursuing as poets and dare I say of the mystical variety, and there was a congruency between our philosophies and our shared mission, you might say. And so we immediately knew that we had to work together. And I invited Rocco to be a part of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society. And to this day, I'm just so grateful and thrilled and honored that Rocco is still a vital part of our organization in the Walled Garden Philosophical Society. He has been such a rock to me throughout the many ups and downs of starting an organization. And many of you will know that we offer this service in the Walled Garden called philosophical mentoring. Both Rocco and I offer this service, and when it comes to the people who mentor me, I'm so grateful that I have so many people I can say have mentored me and continue to mentor me in my life. But Rocco seriously is a true mentor to me, a true spiritual and philosophical guide. Somebody I look up to, somebody I aspire to, I aspire to live with the same seriousness that Rocco lives with. He really takes this experience of living very seriously, and he takes the project of actualization and seeking understanding very seriously. And it's for those and many more reasons that I just absolutely adore this human being. So just generally what you should know about Rocco: he is a poet, he is a mystic, he is a philosopher. He has a podcast, as I mentioned earlier, the Eyes Wide Open Life podcast. He's the author of 2 books that are currently available through Amazon. You can get them. They're called Keeper of the Flame, A Message for Tomorrow, and also Stepping Through, Following Our Own Star Through the Door to Tomorrow. And look, just before we dive into the conversation, I'll mention a couple of things. Number one, this is a very raw conversation. We jumped on a call and just started riffing, and I think that you will find the conversation to be rich. I think you'll find it to be vulnerable, honest, and that's really the only way that Rocco knows how to be, and therefore he teaches me how to be the same in that sort of setting. The second thing that I do want to mention to you is that we have a very, very special event coming up in the Walled Garden Philosophical Society next week. If you find yourself, like many people do right now, being completely bewildered, befuddled, saddened, by the utter chaos towards which humanity seems to be continuing its march, I think that this is going to be an event that you'll want to come to. If you've been listening into the podcast for some time now, or kind of just watching from afar, but you've been sometimes considering whether or not you'd like to come to one of our events or come and check out what we're all about, I really do believe that this is going to be the event that you'll want to come to. We would love to see you there. It's called Lighting Candles, a Vigil for Humanity. And I'd like to read you the event description and then we'll dive into the conversation. So join us for a moment of stillness, reflection, and secular prayer to find the middle way of peace and compassion amidst conflict. Considering the unfolding horror of the present moment, compounded by the fatigue of vigilance and trauma we all must be feeling from several years of pandemic and politically charged outrage, we, the contributors and friends of the Walled Garden, found ourselves compelled toward a path of compassion and witnessing. We are of the shared belief that what is not needed is another volley of opinion, but neither could we in good conscience keep silent or look away and simply do nothing. We realized that when we cannot find what we are looking for in the world, we are called to create it. We do not need to have all the answers, and we do not need to know how to solve the whole problem. All we need is enough courage to put down our raw and impotent empathy, dust off our compassion, and create the shelter we are looking for. On November 16th, check out your local date and time, we will be coming together for Lighting Candles, a Vigil for Humanity. And in attendance and speaking at the event will be Rocco Jarman, myself, Sharon LaBelle, and Martha Hines. I'm going to put the link, as I said, in the show description here for this episode. Otherwise, just go to thewalledgarden.com/events. The event is completely free, though you will have an option to make a donation upon registration. I would love to see you there. And as I said, if you've been waiting to come along to an event in the Walled Garden to see what we're all about and to get to know the community, we would love to see you. So without any further ado, I present to you my conversation with Rocco Jarman.
Simon, so we're back again in conversation after much sort of detours and side quests and main quests for each of us. But when you texted me last week, you said you're looking forward to the conversation. It's going to be an important one. What did you mean?
Yeah. What did I mean? I meant, man, just I've felt like we've both just been kind of hustling to just get stuff done, right, over the past few months. You've been going through your own hills and valleys. I've been going through my own hills and valleys, and I thought that it would be just quite important for us to catch up, have a conversation, record it, and just to see where we're both at this point, not only in our lives, but
the present moment.
Yeah, to this present moment. And let me put it like this. So there's something quite strange about the path that we're both on. Quite strange, right? I want to describe it by putting it like this. Back in 2019, was it 2019? I think it was 2019, going into 2020, when the pandemic hit, there was a moment where I said to myself, oh my gosh, I have to quit my job. I was doing very well as a gym manager. It was clear career path, all that sort of stuff. But I was like, I have to quit. I'm called to do something different. And that was to, really just jump back into my podcasting, philosophical mentoring, everything like that. And I remember saying something uh, at the very start of 2020, and I said on the podcast, uh, I have this feeling, this deep feeling that the 20s are going to bring some of the most insane challenges and also opportunities that humanity has ever seen, right? And it's like 3 weeks later, we're hit with COVID, you know. Uh, and then it seems, at least upon basic observation of world events, that it's just been one crazy, insane, stupid thing after the other.
Mhm.
And it is happening constantly,
Mm.
in a way that
Deranging.
and it's in a way that, like, before COVID, things did seem different, and they seem very different now, just in terms of, I don't know, maybe it's just my youth, but I don't know. Yeah, and now look at this. It feels
Let,
like we're
let's
coming to
talk
a
about
point.
that. Let's talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
fuck, man, do I see that? And I had my own intuitions from a different lens. But look, first of all, how prescient was that sense that you had? Um, and to my point that I'm about to make, I think, you know, I don't know if the following is true, or perhaps a better way of saying it is, I can't prove the following, but this is how I've come to believe the world and what makes sense to me. And I think a lot of people would be far better off prefacing their thoughts and opinions in that way. Now, I can't prove this to be true, but I suspect it to be true, and I'm living my life in the weight of that veracity. And that's that individuals, individually and collectively, we've got a kind of, okay, the tension to me is between, like, let's call it fate and destiny. Again, these are borrowed words, but there's no better words. Fate would be like the kind of, you know, like the Greek fates. This is the story that's mapped out for you. This is the relationship that you have with your time, the land, your era, the community, the language, the society, your family, your ancestry. You come with these sets of advantages, handicaps, predispositions, whatever it is, to have a certain kind of life. But then there's also a destiny that you come with, which is kind of somehow in opposition to this in some way. Some star in the sky that you're trying to follow, some itch you're trying to scratch, some place you're trying to be, something you're trying to become. And as luck would have it, which I don't believe is luck at all, the one seems in direct opposition always to the other. And it's in the tension between those two, in the negotiating through your handicaps and the finding the wisdom and the meaning and the merit and the blessings and the combinations of curses and blessings you inherit from your fate, in contention with where you're trying to get to, where you're trying to, what you're trying to achieve, who you're trying to become, that basically the whole of human life is played out. And what I'm trying to get to is that I don't think all of us answer that calling. We don't all, and it's not that it's never going to come for us. I think there's like a ripeness and a readiness. Certain people in the grand cosmic um, kindergarten of life and of humanity are just ready for the next level of school. And so we get sort of called consciously, subconsciously towards a harvest where we need to grow out of this paradigm, which involves a lot of the jettisoning of old paradigms and ideas. There's a saying that David White says, which he admits is not his. He said he overheard somebody saying, our language is too small for the territory we've already entered. And streaming services came along, and social media came along, and the proliferation of opinion and interconnection and brokering, which then ushered in algorithms. And then soon we were teaching machines, the best minds in psychology and human behavior, were teaching machines how to co-opt human attention and energy in the service of keeping us captured on those platforms. And it was a social experiment none of us understood the scope or implications of as we tumbled stupidly knee deep into them. And now the waves of like global alarm are not just like the tsunami that came. The tsunami that came in Thailand was the last time there was a world event for which everyone was united in their sentiment. Everything that happened thereafter became a form of derision, divisiveness, polarization of factions. And we're all having, it's almost like a zygote in an embryo. You know, the cell splits itself apart and then splits itself apart and then splits itself apart. And that's how individuation happens. It's a natural function of evolution. And society is splitting itself apart on every conceivable line of division: age, sex, sexuality, sexual identity, race, ethnicity, politics, every single thing. And now, finally, we're back to religion again with Israel and Palestine. And I think some of these things are inevitable because when you hold these crude worldviews that we've grown up with, we inherited, they are not sufficient vehicles for us to hit this next level of evolution. We have to jettison some of these things. But the only cure for apathy is discomfort. So we have to be milled and threshed into the letting go of these things, just like we are in our own lives. All of you and me both, our journey here today was about threshing, milling, some kind of brutal alchemy that we're going through in our souls, which seemed hard from a first-person immediate perspective, but from a vantage point, you start seeing the unavoidable necessity of it. It's the only way to get the husk loose so that the essence, the kernel can be liberated. And what I've spotted a while ago, but I've got new language for it now, is the fact that there's just these rolling patterns. As you said, it was the American election. Then it was Black Lives Matter. Then it was Brexit. Then it was the Ukraine war. Then it was this fallout. Then it was that fallout. Then it was Ukraine. Then it was COVID. Or sorry, it was COVID. Then it was Ukraine. And now it's Israel. And the meme that you want to see is of social media or the military industrial complex chain smoking and lighting the one cigarette that they're sucking on, which is now Israel and Palestine, with the half-burnt butt end of Ukraine, Russia, which was in turn lit by and all you're doing is you're passing the chagrin and animus and mistrust and like a baton. And the human race is like when you see kids of 10 years old playing soccer or football, they don't play positions. You literally get 20 kids running around behind the two that are contesting for the ball, mindlessly, unaware of this game that they're dragged into. And I think in that ramble, what the invitation is for those of us that are called to this harvest of consciousness, of awareness, of evolution of spirit, is to look at it and go, oh, fuck, this is like Groundhog Day. If it's not this, it's going to be that. Yes, it doesn't mean that what's happening in the Middle East is not egregious or there is not calamity or strife or injustice. Of course there is. Of course there is. But if we can't notice how we're being gamed and manipulated and how the actual inner conflict, the actual conflict that needs to be won first is the one in our nervous system and in our conscious awareness, when we become aware that we are not applying critical thinking, that raw agitation and animus, however relatable, cannot be part of a functional solution to a way forward. So I think that's the actual invitation to conscious human beings right now is stop picking a side and just start realizing the game that you're caught in. It's kind of Plato's cave all over again at a different level. Yeah.
I think you're exactly right. And the funny thing is, I said, by the way, can I just do a mic check? By the way, is everything good? Can you hear me okay?
Seems
Like,
okay to
it's
me.
good. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
I was speaking with a friend just on Sunday, and we were talking about all of the various issues that exist in America right now. Oh, corporations, and Ukraine, and then you've got Israel and
It's a dumpster fire.
homelessness, and
Yeah,
you've got
yeah.
politics, and look at and it came to a point where I kind of just said, you know what, I'm kind of getting tired of even the complaining about all of these different things that's going on, because at the end of the day, what's needed is for true leaders
That's it.
who understand to step forward and say, all of this bullshit would be solved if we got to the root problem, the actual deep level spiritual problem that is going on everywhere with every single human being right now.
And it's spiritual health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even Joe Siracusa, in our conversation the other day, he just said, like, where are America's like real hardcore intellectual public intellectuals who are asking these kinds of questions?
They're just
Like,
swamped and too
yeah,
afraid, conditioned to be too afraid to say anything lest they fall on the wrong side of whatever sanctimonious court of public opinion is holding sway at the moment. That's the problem. It's what that old strange Russian looking guy that defected was speaking about when he mentioned ideological subversion. So you first bring in the whole 1984 problem, or the George Orwell problem, where a lie is truth and up is down, and you just fuck with everybody. And then eventually, even somebody who goes, no, this is insane. Oh, listen to them now, marginalizing our suffering. There's always some victim line to play. And so if you were an academic, especially considering the economic model, this is the problem, Simon. It's so complex and interrelated. If you look at the incentive structure of academics, especially if they want to get tenure, and you look at the political climate of how their tenure is granted, or how precarious their livelihoods are pursuant on the political correctness of what comes out of their mouth next. We get what you incentivize, and we are not incentivizing these people to speak. They have to be so bold. And then what happens is you get someone like Brett Weinstein, who originally he was defenestrated unfairly, actually, by the woke mob, and he started speaking about that and got very little traction. And as soon as he hitched or pinned the tail of his own personal chagrin onto the donkey of COVID whataboutism, suggesting horse tranquilizers as the way forward for cures to viral pandemics, he just got an instant add water captured mob of zeal, animus, fervor, and support. And now it's not in his interests to moderate, to step back, to change the topic. It just has to be on this raw edge of fermenting conspiracy theory, however wild, because that's his meal ticket. And so if you get the two polarities, so you get these professional agitators, as you know, I'm not a fan of Jordan Peterson, because I believe, even though he has the merit and the chops to speak sanity and wisdom into the present moment, he's not incentivized that way. He's incentivized to keep mic drop moments and launching the next shit sling on Twitter. So that's on the one side, you've got all these professional agitators who we have pedestaled as the mouthpieces of our generation. And this is all of them: Alex Jones, Brett Weinstein, Jordan Peterson, that other absolute bag of dicks. What's his name? Tim Pool. There's a spectrum there of people who are playing with, just
Tim
kind
Pool.
of flirting with the truth, leaning on the wrong side of right because it suits my purpose, and people who are just outright playing bad faith games because it's in their business model to do so. And on the other side, you've got the people who actually fucking know what is going on, but their hands are tied and they are gagged under risk of losing their livelihoods. And it's not as if it's unfounded. People have lost careers over a misunderstood tweet. Not even something that they actually meant. Just it sounded a bit tone deaf to the highly traumatized or aroused nerve of the present moment. What do you do? What do you do? It's us. If we can't find the leadership in us, it's not going to come from anywhere else. No one else is coming. There's no person that's been waiting in the wings this whole time with sufficient celebrity and social capital and intellectual chops. It's the yous and me's and these the this army of reluctant speakers, I think, that needs to make the difference. I think that the quote we want to take from that is "bag of dicks."
One of your favorites, I've come to learn.
Yes.
I definitely, despite I feel having a somewhat clearer vision of the underlying spiritual issues that we're going through. I still count myself in that mob who wants that answer. Of what is it, like what is the thing that is needed right now in each human being. Is well, let me can I frame it like this? Actually, I was speaking with Judith Stove at the Melbourne Stoicon recently, and we were doing a little soul searching with Seneca there. It was fantastic, and we picked this probably my favorite section of writing from Seneca, where he pretty much says that he does say, if he had not been admitted into the study of God, the nature of God, then his life wouldn't have been worth living. Probably
Did
as
he
far
say
as
that, or
he did say that.
divinity?
He said, if I had not been admitted to these studies, it would not have been worth being born.
Sorry, but of God or divinity?
Of God, of the nature of God.
Right.
And this section is so beautiful. It's such a fantastic critique of the so often watered down version of Stoicism that we get today, which is more of a personal development thing than it is a true spiritual path to a richer human experience. Anyway, he also says in there, well, there are also these people who say they have knowledge, and yet they cannot see that this cosmos that we live in, I'm paraphrasing here, but this cosmos that we live in is the most well ordered, most well planned thing. It's like they think that they know, and then they go ahead and say that it's just all random and it's all, it's just, we're just kind of stardust floating through the universe, right? And it's all random. And he says that these are the people that, like, they can't see that. So we have reason, but they can't see that also means that we live in a reasonable universe, right? Anyway,
Yes, which is
I'm
hermetics. Yeah,
butchering
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot in there. I mean, he talks about God being all mind, right? There's a lot in there that you could say he's getting a whole yeah, hermetic brush on his canvas there. But what I came to as we were reading that the other day, it occurred to me, okay, so he's talking about these people who say they have knowledge, and he's kind of condemning them. You know, how could you say you have knowledge when you can't even see that you're a part of this fantastic, well-ordered cosmos? It's perfect, right? And then there's like a weird paradox in there because it's like, well, Seneca, if you understood that, then you'd see that even these people are meant to be here, and you wouldn't be condemning them. You know, it's like there's this kind of like what you're saying at the start, this
Recursivity. Yeah,
tension.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I often find myself just in utter confusion between those two worlds of remembering
Uh,
or coming back to this
this is the thing.
belief, right? That there is a perfected whole totality of which we're all a part, that this thing is, and it is a belief, you know, because again,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
necessarily know how to prove it, but then it's like you look out there and it's, what do you do about that?
Right. Can I
That type
paraphrase
of thing.
that? What you're
Please, yeah, because
pointing at is, on the one hand, there seems to be maybe not divine providence, but ultimately everything comes out in the wash and maps out as meaning or reason. There's a reason for everything. And how much do you choose the what would then be fatalistic or complacent or accepting the Tao of what is? And how much do you choose defiance? How much do you say, just because things are this way doesn't mean I want to strive for better? The irony is, I've written about this in so many ways. One of the ways was through poetry. I wrote this piece called Not Today. And the premise of it is you you are almost beleaguered by the relentlessness of what comes at you, what seeks to undo you. And it's only later on, excuse me, it's only later on that it dawns on you, again, the perspective arrives, that it was the very relentlessness that drove you on and impossibly on. So if leadership, if the daring heart of leadership is anything, it's the ability to sit with paradox and resolve the discomfort of it within ourselves, rejecting the easy comfort, the default comfort of choosing A or B, because that default comfort, that behavior is the nature of everything that is wrong in the world today. In an argument, in a conflict, in a theological debate, any form of opposition where there is human energy and attention on one side and human energy and attention on other side, and they both seem to have some form of veracity, it boils down always to the story of the elephant and the five blind sages, in which they're all blindfolded, or they're blind, and they're asked to identify what they're holding, and each faithfully describes the object in front of them. And yet somehow the people transcribing what they hear can't reconcile the answer. The answers are irreconcilable. And the punchline of the joke is the fool, the beggar, comes along and he takes one look at it and says, "You're all right and you're all wrong." And they go, the king says to him, "If you don't tell us how they're all right and they're all wrong, I'm going to put you to the sword." And he goes, to each of them, they think it's the truth, but they're all holding a different part of the elephant. And the one describes a snake, a spear, a trunk, a boulder, a whatever. And the argument that I've maintained ever since I started arriving at this dawning awakening or understanding was that every single time you find a binary, A versus B, this versus that. The piece that is missing is the lower fundamental truth or the higher transcendent perspective. And leadership to me, intellectual and philosophical and spiritual, became assuming that those were there and refusing to accept that there was an impasse. And then the more I trusted that they were there, the more they revealed themselves to me. And I can talk about a few examples if we want. But starting with that premise, that goodwill, that curiosity, that preparedness to accept that old me might have been wrong, or even not to rush towards the certainty of a known answer because it always finds fertile ground in yet another irreconcilable dichotomy or paradox. And the only way that paradoxes resolve, as per philosophy, as per Stoicism, as per divinity, is either down towards lower fundamentals that reconcile both, or higher transcendent perspectives in which both can be reconciled. It's just so fucking obvious. And we are caught, and I've written a lot about this actually, we are caught at this moment in a place of binary thinking and binary reasoning. It's very simple. If you are slightly colorblind and you see everything monochromatically, sooner or later, your brain, just to function, just to navigate the world that you're stuck in, is going to start discriminating against shades of gray into black or white, just so you can move. Otherwise, you're stuck in analysis paralysis forever. And so it actually is a function or a factor of the limitation of human perception. We see the world in such limited field or such limited bandwidths of light. We hear such limited amounts of noise. When you take the face-to-face element away and you reduce that communication to virtual, and you reduce it again and put it through text, and you add now layers of animus and emotional triggering onto me, and layers of language filtering and psychological priming and framing. I could just have woken up in the morning and been in a shit mood, or I could feel anxious, or I could any fucking number of reasons. I could actually have just misheard what you were saying. You could have spelt it incorrectly by accident and it could have triggered me. There is a plethora of reasons, of opportunities for misunderstanding and misinterpreting. And it's not like we arrive at our mistrusts dishonestly, because I'm not a fool to assume other people are indifferent or unkind in their stance towards my needs. It's a learned behavior. It's a learned truth. Add those ingredients into a jar, shake it up, remove critical thinking and discernment, and push go. And that's what you get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the project for me became just this adamant, I've got one tenet of faith, or a few that I hold on to, which ultimately boils down to one. It's that everything that exists, that can exist and will ever exist, does so under reason. That's the prime, and I might, as Camus said, die and find out one day that I was wrong, but I'd rather believe that and find out that I was wrong than waste all my energy and attention on animus and hatred and divisiveness and feuding with everything and everyone, including myself, and find out in the end that I was wrong. And so with that premise, if you just use that as an inquiry device, like a thought experiment, you don't even have to fucking believe that the other team is innocent or that they don't have anything to pay for. You just have to say, okay, run the two scenarios, hold on to your animus and them theirs, and see how it plays out. I was married for 12 years, okay? And there was no self-awareness in that scenario. And the lack of goodwill and the lack of self-awareness and the lack of emotional competence and the lack of beginning with this premise every single time had a predictable outcome. And the people that suffered were the most vulnerable. And there were no winners, and it was Pyrrhic, absolutely Pyrrhic. So that's the one thought experiment. It's never going to end any other way. Any fool who believes that some form of Deus ex machina is going to come because you write a cunty enough tweet, like, oh, this is now what's going to move the needle of the other person's perspective. Compassion and reason won't do it, but I'm sure if I insult their integrity or their intelligence, this is now what will. You're not helping. So that's scenario A. And scenario B goes, I'm living with a lived belief that there is a deeper fundamental that we're both overlooking or not aware of the nature of its impact or influence on this, or there is a higher transcendent perspective, which once we arrive there, it negates the intensity or the veracity of the fact that these two things are intractable.
Yeah.
And that's wisdom to me. Yes.
So starting with the assumption that there must be a way. You might not know it, but there has to be a way.
Isn't that the spirit of philosophy and science?
Yeah.
We don't know what the answer is, but we're going to keep open to it and try a hat on and really commit to the look. You know, and herein comes the idea of being open-minded. We think we're open-minded and we call ourselves open-minded and we say, I am open-minded. And then we half fucking listen with our hearts closed. You can be as open-minded as you want. You're not really open-minded until you're also open-hearted. And to be open-hearted is to look at every single problem, maybe not like a saint. Maybe we can't all get there. Maybe we don't have that kind of magnanimity. Sometimes I don't. But you know what I can do? I can look at every single problem like an engineer or like somebody trying to debug some code, whether it's HTML or SQL or Python or C or anything. Something is happening that I didn't expect. And I can resort to frustration. I can resort to anger. I can resort to victimhood. I can resort to blame. But if you've ever done any programming on a website or an app or a piece of software, it doesn't fucking matter how hurt your feelings are. At the end of the day, underneath there is some problem which you did or didn't cause, but which is now part of your problem. And the only fucking stance that gets you towards the answer is curiosity and stepping through it with equanimity, going, is it this? Is it that? Did I use the wrong word? Is this right? If you can't have this form of utilitarian critical thinking, you just make the job harder. That doesn't mean there's nothing to be emotional about, or that you have to compartmentalize or jettison your compassion. It just means you have to compartmentalize your compassion, because the truth is, if you really care about getting the answer, you are best served by putting the raw emotion down and looking with true curiosity and tolerance at this problem. And some of us find it very hard to find that grace of magnanimity in us. I'm learning it, but it's hard because I'm a human being. But you know what I can always reason with is, you know what, fuck it. Maybe there was a misunderstanding and maybe it's on my side. Maybe.
Yeah.
Just because it's hard to accept or it feels counterintuitive doesn't mean it's not true. What would we do? Where would we get if we just gave that a chance for 2 weeks? Everybody said, okay, there's a ceasefire. You can go right back to being as fucking angry and vitriolic and justified and righteous and sanctimonious, bar nothing. Just park it for 2 weeks. Take your first week just to reflect, just to calm down, just to find perspective, just to breathe. And then make some space, step away from it, and then come back. And then put that idea on. I'm a coder, I'm a programmer. What would I do if that was me? How would I feel if I stood in those shoes? What would I want if I was as vulnerable or as aggrieved as that person from their perspective? What would a solution look like? Is there anywhere fundamental here that I can reach for? Where would we get? Not to barrel on for the whole conversation, Simon, but I remember some inspiration came to me when I was struggling with my divorce in those difficult moments, right in the beginning, before I inherited the quality of reasoning and wisdom that I've worked really hard at to get to today. This beautiful question came to me, and I sat my ex-wife down and I looked her straight in the face and I said to her, I've got two questions for you. One, are you in the kind of relationship you would want for your best friend? Are you living the kind of life you would want for your best friend? Is this reality that's currently playing out raw and painfully something that you would choose for someone that you truly cared about? And if the answer is no, in which universe, what form of sanity do you apply? What reason do you paste over the top of this to convince yourself that carrying on the way that you are is prudent or self-love? It's insane. And the second question was, knowing the way that you behave, knowing the games that you play, knowing how you're motivated and how you're likely to react or behave, knowing the lack of generosity or compassion that you're likely to bring when you are aroused, are you the kind of person you would want to be in a relationship with? She was incensed by that question. And I said, hold on. In the spirit of where I'm trying to get to, these are not accusations. I'm telling you right now, my answer to both of those are no. But the point is, I'm prepared to try and do something about it. But I cannot do it on my own. I had to be vulnerable. No one wants to do that. No one wants to do that. And so the only thing that can happen is there can be a broker. Someone can broker a conversation. And so the reason why I invented that modality of let's play the game, which you and I have spoken about, was a means to umpire and referee objectively and teach the audience how to learn what they're watching, teach the players how to play, and teach any kind of invigilator or moderator how the rules of the game work. There are still going to be calls that we get wrong. Human beings are ignorant. But fucking hell, how much more ground would we cover if we were playing that game as a game, treating it like a code that was trying to be debugged, instead of trying to point score? And that philosophy, it only dawned on me later, the profundity of those two questions. And yeah. I'm going to breathe into that. I find it very frustrating to know some of the nature of the problem and some of what a solution might look like, and not be able to get the kind of audience, platform, traction, airtime that I think a voice like this deserves. It's very frustrating to watch from the sidelines as the world continues to fucking burn and stab itself while it's on flame, while it's aflame, and then trying to put out the flames with a knife, sort of a thing. And then every time you say anything to anyone, they can't actually hear what you've just said. All they hear is that you disagree with them, that the blue team is the bad team. And then they go, yes, but what about this guy that said that? And I said, I also think that shit. Then why aren't you criticizing them? And I said, I do. I'm just not now. But that also doesn't take away from it. And you cannot get traction when people are so aroused. And so back to your first question as to, do we step back and let it all fucking burn and come out in the wash? I've had to accept the fact that the reason our voices are so impotent at the moment is because under that rubric of reason, some of this shit just needs to fucking bubble over and vent. Because until it vents, until there's crying, until there's pain, and unfortunately, until there is blood, it's only too late where people realize that they've taken things too far. And you can't talk somebody who's in a murderous rage back from an edge. What reason can you pour into that? So I've got a poem.
You can't do that for a person, let alone a nation.
Oh,
I mean,
so fucking tough, dude. So I've got this piece that I'd like to it's short. I just want to read it to you. It says, lighting candles. If you are afraid now, find the safest place you are able. Make a small circle, one of love, and light a candle, even if it is only in your mind. Find the stillness and let the storm rage outside. Let the storm rage outside. It is the passing of a fury and of an energy which the gentlest hearts of our time could not have held. And you are not alone, even in this. Even in this. Now is not the time for speaking or shouting. Now is the time for lighting candles. Our candles are our way to speak love into a world that can no longer listen. I think the storm needs to spend some of its fury. The fever needs to burn through. I think, so many times in my corporate world, in my marriage that failed, in relationships that I've tried to patch together and keep holding on, fuck, if I had just let them break, then I would have spared myself so much pain. And then in the corporate world, good people don't want to see their efforts fail. So they cobble together solutions and remediations. Eventually, everything is fucking held together by gaffer tape and band-aids and energy and stress, and that actually drives the barometer of tension up because you're so fucking invested and you're so raw. And actually, you would have been better off. And the person that was so fucking stupid to keep fomenting the disaster, the only way they can learn is if their stupidity is absolutely mirrored in their face through the unavoidable reality of an unmitigated fucking mess that results when things fall apart. It's a very difficult line to tread because how much of that is about what does love look like? It takes great spiritual leadership and great wisdom, which we can't claim to have. I mean, the more you love, the more you're careful about making bold statements about wisdom. Because there's so much at stake, and you're not perfect. But I think that's all we can do is ask ourselves all the time, what does love look like right now? And start listening to different kinds of voices. Not ones that are anyone right now that is choosing or saying it's this or it's that. Avoid that. That's the problem. That's the problem. Listen to the voices that are speaking about tolerance, around moderation, around compassion, around understanding, not meekness. We've tried that shit as well. It's the very thin little wedge that we can play now. Very thin wedge. The way I operate is I'm trying to speak into that wedge. I'm not getting a lot of ears, but you got to be in it to win it, right? And fuck, all I can do is try. All I can do is try. Now, urgency is not the answer. I learned the hard way. Simon, I just want to make an admission here to you on air. You've encountered me in a very intense frame of mind. I want to draw a full circle now, because the reason that I was that way is because I believed it was prudent. I didn't get there dishonestly either. I was sitting with a perspective that absolutely could help, without which so much suffering could have been avoided. And I couldn't get airtime in the fucking room. And every time I was in airtime, everybody was either kumbayaing or talking at such a trivial fucking who cares level. Is it this? This is what so-and-so said about that. Oh, this is my opinion on that. Dude, I don't fucking care. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. I don't care about anything. But therewith went all my inner peace, all my social capital. And I had to learn the hard way. a very, very, very humbling but beautiful lesson that it doesn't matter how right you are. It doesn't matter how right you are. Because every single signal that we try and transmit between my radio set and yours, between my soul and yours, is like any radio signal. It's message and energy. And all the message can be lost and distorted if your energy carries a different kind of message. If it speaks of arrogance or of intolerance or urgency or anger, because then no one can hear what you're saying because their nervous systems just read the loudest signal in the room, which is your vibe that you're giving off. It's a very fucking tough lesson, especially if you truly believe in your heart and you've sat in reflection and prayer and contemplation, and you think, fuck man, this could make a difference. So what a way to arrive at it's a different kind of humility. It's not garden variety humility here. It's more this pragmatism. It doesn't matter how right you are. It doesn't matter, son. What matters is if you can get people to hear you. If you cannot make the medicine digestible, it doesn't matter how healing it is. And so my quest at the moment is to make the medicine healing and digestible.
Man, that's beautiful. I'm so glad we're talking right now. When did you write that poem with the candle?
A long time ago, actually. I wrote it. I think it was prior to COVID. I could feel, these people that I'm talking about that are kind of primed for a certain kind of harvest. We receive a signal. We pick up a signal, and we interpolate or we demodulate that signal in our own language, in our own way. And that becomes our practice and our craft, like art, music, poetry, philosophy, public speaking, whatever that is. And I know you did with your book, The Poet and the Sage. I know it was a stream of something that you're still trying to demodulate yourself.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's, so often, I mean, I think since our very first conversation together, it's been very clear to both of us that we're kind of walking in tandem, that there's a real, even you just reading me that poem, I don't know if, I mean, there's no way you'd know this, but about a week ago, I was in the this is so funny. It's in the 99-cent store. Classic American picture, right? Going into the 99-cent store right next to the music school. And I see all of that here in Southern California. I don't know if this is very common elsewhere in America, but certainly in Hispanic populations, they sell these candles that are beautiful and hilarious. Beautiful because they're these like sacred candles, very tall, kind of like, they'll have like an icon of Christ on it, or of Mother Mary, and so this is the sacred heart of Jesus candle, and and of course it's got like it's got like the brand name of the candle above Jesus, and on the back it's got the code, and it's got all it's just, yeah, so it's beautiful and it's hilarious, right? But I saw this about a week ago. I'm like, I want that Sacred Heart of Jesus candle. So I bought it, and I've just been sitting there night after night lighting this candle. And in the past couple of days, you've sent me these beautiful poems that you've written saying just that. And just to that, just to your point about arriving at that spot of like, hang on, slow down, uh, and really try to see clearly. I mean, for me, I've had the sense recently, like what I really want to do is I want to I just want to create good art, and I want to finally, for so long now I've just been engaging myself in all kinds of busyness in order to prepare myself for this moment where I can finally say, I'm going to start opening my journals again. I'm going to start opening those journals and reading the hundreds of poems that flowed through over the past 2 years. And I'm going to start slowly putting them together, you know, putting them out there. And that's the sort of thing that will not allow really any room for trying to gain audience. I mean, because it's like, who's interested in the ramblings of this strange Australian poet like you are too? It's like, well, but it's I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm so excited to do that, because yeah, I mean, even just recently, just spending time, despite everything on my list of things to do, just deciding it's Sunday. Fuck it. I'm going to Mount Baldy. I'm going to hike to the top. I'm going to play my didgeridoo, you know, and just doing stuff like
It's
that.
actually more important now than ever.
Stuff that makes you realize what humanity is all about, what we're supposed to be doing, you know. What
It
does it mean
reminds
to be
me
a
now
human being?
of something that I've been sitting with that I wrote about in the new book that I released. It's an idea that just keeps coming to me, or I'm living with so much. To be a true seeker is to live with a prayer, or is to walk side by side with a prayer of wanting to be whole and to be home. And to be a true seeker is to live on the edge of a prayer, to be whole and to be home. So the image is of like a pathway in the grasslands over undulating hills at night, and then above, like the arc of the Milky Way, and those two paths meeting together at the far horizon. To be a true seeker is to live on the edge of a prayer, to be whole and to be home. And so often those paths seem astray from one another. And like I've just decided that for too long I was pursuing the thing in the world, whatever it was. And I encountered a form of stuckness that I intuited in a split second was not punishment. It was not cause for more depression and wondering, why am I not finding my way, or how am I not in service to life or to God or to whatever. It was an invitation back to the apprenticeship of myself to myself. And that everything that I was marginalizing in my urgency to be of service to the world was betraying some deep contract that I had with my own soul, which was undermining or diminishing or minimizing the essential necessity of giving energy and attention to my truth, to the things that scratch my itches. It's very noble to have this main quest, and everything else becomes secondary to that. But you become so dogged, you get so close to the raw edge of that wound that you lose yourself. Actually, you lose yourself. And the stuckness that transpires is not a punishment. It is, in fact, an invitation to realize that your soul will not let you move forward any fucking more until you renew and heal that contract with yourself, until you come into alignment with your own soul, until you become congruent again with your authenticity and your integrity, and to realize with grace that you are not here to live a life of abject service at all costs. The way will block you, the road will be seen and then not seen, the hillside will hide, then reveal the way you should take, not as a punishment, but to say a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Tick-tock, meander, pendulum, seasonal. And until you can find that cadence, you're going to feel unsettled in your own life. And the paths of being whole and being home are going to continuously stray from each other until you start realizing that that first poem I ever sent you about being and becoming, what's the riddle of being and becoming? Where should we strive for defiance against what is? And where should we accept what is? Both of those are schools of wisdom. You know, push against the world, become this thing that you want to craft yourself into, become that man, become that woman. And the other one says, accept what is, accept what is. And the maddening question is, when do I do this? When do I do that? It's not A or B, it's a dance. 1 foot here, 1 foot there, 1 foot here, 1 foot there. And you keep doing that until you realize it's a dance, until you stop taking it all so fucking seriously. Actually, yes. And always asking yourself, what does love look like? And love doesn't always look like outer service. It also looks like inner service, because you didn't come here to live half a life. You came here for your cup to be filled also. Now, the trick is finding ways to do both at the same time. And you can't do that in an idealistic, sanctimonious way. It has to be authentic, and you have to put down the project. It's like trying to get in from the car to the house with all the groceries. You're convincing yourself if you carry everything in one go, somehow you're going to win something. You actually need to put everything down in order to pick it up right. And I think it's beautiful that you're going up, because you're sending me messages often now. You're up here, you're up there, you're playing with your didgeridoo, you're taking photos again, you're writing again. It would be a shame if this version of you didn't get some airtime.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something that is now coming back up. Just in terms of my, you've said so much there that just so deeply resonates with me, and slaps me over the face and says, "Yeah, let's go." Like it's just. The number of contracts that I've written, like you say, those covenants you make with yourself, in these moments of contemplation, and the sort of stuff that comes out, and then it's like the next morning you're back on that train of, well, how can I use this to monetize? How can I put this to good work? Or how can this be the thing that helps
every fucking time?
It's just yeah.
Oh my God, it becomes kind of pathetic after a while. You're like a dog with a pink thing running around trying to fuck the problem. I know, it's just insane.
I think that's going to go down as the most grotesque.
But you've seen these like these
bag of dicks got nothing.
Those small carpet shitter kind of dogs that they get that wild look in their eye, and they've just got this enormous glistening erection, and they're fucking dry humping the air, and they just fucking people's legs. And I look at that energy, and I recognize with some humor, little tinge of shame, that I see that in exactly what you described. Like you have a profound night lying there. I take psychedelics, or I take edibles, and I'm just like surfing the currents of the cosmos, and it's just this beautiful download comes to me. And even in that fucking moment, I can't just be there. I have to secretly okay, is this going to be the thing? Is that going to be the thing? Okay, cool. What project? And some beautiful things have come from that. But at some point in time, you're just going to burn yourself out. And it's like that story of the two bulls that are walking down the hill. And the young bull says to the old bull, "Oh my God, I'm going to screw that cow. I'm going to screw that cow. I'm going to screw that cow." And the guy says, "Just relax, dude. Take our time and screw them all. We'll get there. We'll get there." And the final thing I want to invite you to, actually I want to invite you to talk about this, Simon. You know, there's this wisdom that I think we need to outgrow around, okay, if you want to crush it, you've got to be up in the morning before everybody else. You've got to be putting in the reps, because if you've been doing that for 3 hours while everyone's asleep, that's how you get ahead. And if there's a convenience store or a petrol station, a gas station that gives you 100 points for every tank you fill up, eventually you get $500, $100 off your whatever. There's always these fucking incentives. And if you do like a Scooby-Doo, when they lift the hood off the villain, off the ghost, there's always it's the mayor. It's the thing that's always underneath is this lived belief in scarcity, actually. Because if you can't stop, even as the world is slowly coming off the rails, and can't find your voice and your vocation in the midst of your practice, you lose your own essence in the pursuit of the thing. And it's because you are ultimately, if the hustle is necessary, it means that there is scarcity, that you should live in fear, that pronoia is not a truth about the world. And you have to do the opposite. You have to go counter to your intuition. And I want to hear your thoughts about that, actually. Because you and I both think pronoia is the thing, right? We believe in it, but a lived belief is incongruous with hustle. That intensity of hustle that we were both engaged in.
Well, I think similar to the way that I jump between these feelings of, well, in the dance of my life, okay, sometimes you're on the side of beautiful, well-ordered, providential cosmos, and then sometimes you're on the side of
chaos.
Holy shit, look at everything that's happening. How could this be beautiful, well, and ordered? It's exactly the same thing. You know, sometimes I'm in that state of that anxious drive towards doing. There's always more on my list, and there's always more to add to the list, and there's always more, and it's just, you know, you feel like you're climbing a mountain to a point that doesn't exist.
Well, there's another peak behind it, or
yeah. But then sometimes, you know, like I said, you remember, oh, okay, no, it's Sunday. I'm not going to do all of that stuff. I'm going to the mountain, you know. But even when you get to the mountain, oh, what gear am I going to take so that I can capture all of this? which I'm glad I do sometimes, because then I have this beautiful memory that I can put down.
It's necessary.
It's necessary. And again, I go through it right now, right? It's like, well, I take this gear and there's something icky about that, but then I remember it and I can see it and I can share that with people. And isn't that beautiful? It's like it is that constant stepping.
But isn't even that like you realize that you didn't find the line perfectly, but you realized it's not nowhere, that the only way to get to the next step is to take this one badly and then reflect with equanimity and compassion to yourself afterwards and go, okay, retro, if I had my time again, what would I do differently? If that is a great way to find your way forward. It's to be vulnerable enough to get it wrong, which incidentally is exactly the same advice that you do when you're trying to solve problems in the world. No one, anyone claiming to have answers on that now is full of shit. The only way we're going to find it is to find the courage and the tolerance to do a few things imperfectly and keep amending ourselves to looking for better ways again and iteratively. That's how nature does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the answer is yes in time, not just right now. There is no right way. There's no only way. There's better ways, but the only way I find the better way is by giving a crack to the less than better way. How else do you arrive there?
Well, look, one thing I will say is that, and this, like, I mean, somebody once asked me, "Are you happy?" And I said, "No."
Honestly.
That's not the word. That's not the word. I'm not happy, right? But everything is deeply meaningful, right? And that's way better. It's way better. And to me, despite the fact that everything is so choppy and living in these paradoxes and trying to find my way, and also recognizing that it's already been found and there's already an arrival, even though, it's like it in all of that
Inception.
kind of psychological spiritual chaos, right? I know that at my core I can rest in that same thing that you just said. There has to be a better way. There's, there is a path, I'm on it, it's fine. There is an all is well that undergirds all of my internal fluctuations.
We lose it though sometimes. We do worry sometimes.
Well, yeah, exactly. And but then when you remember, it's like, oh, okay.
You know that thing that I write so often, it's actually paraphrased from the Ramayana, and I'm deliberately saying it differently. The question goes, Rama asks Hanuman, he says to him, "Monkey, who are you?" And he goes, "My lord, when I forget who I am, I follow you. But when I remember who I am, you and I are the same." And I always paraphrase it as, I make it universal for everyone. I say, when I forget who I am, I follow the way. And when I remember who I am, the way and I are the same.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Rocco, would you like to promote any recent
Fuck oath, I would.
publications?
I've done so much. I've got so much writing up on Substack.
You do,
I'm
yeah.
doing that seminar on the 21st of November called A Better Way, which is about people like you and I who are trying to share their gifts in the world, but without compromising their authenticity and integrity with all the ick and this kind of undead fucking ickiness that is internet marketing and algorithms and sales funnels and shit. And I've put a lot of work actually into understanding that with a philosophical lens and considering what better might look like, including how to navigate the burgeoning AI space, because there's ways to use those tools which don't compromise our integrity and or our ethics. But we don't have guidelines for these, and they're certainly not going to emerge from the sphere that's using them the most. So, we spend years building ourselves and hours or days building something, whether it's an article or a bit of content or a podcast. And on the other side of the field is someone who just builds it through AI or steals it from someone else with no fucking scruples. And you call their stuff content and you call my stuff content. It is such a terribly uneven and disparaging reality to be playing in. And we need to find ways of differentiating that. We need to change the language. We need to update the language. We need to educate people. And that webinar is about that. So people can go to eyeswideopenlife.org/one word, a better way. And then there's, you can sign up for the newsletter and find your way to the event registration there. And I think understanding that our craft is not a commodity, and that there is craft and art over here. It's first of all educating creatives like ourselves and aligned entrepreneurs, and the second thing is educating public, that it doesn't matter how good of a radio signal I'm sending out, if you're not putting any effort into relaying the signal or receiving it clearly or meeting me halfway, or if you don't see part of the culpability on your lap, this is never going to work. Then you're going to get the internet and ultimately the world that you deserve. So that's the one thing that I'm working on. And the other one is I released that book, Stepping Through, which is about stepping through, about being threshed, about following these journeys, following our own star, sometimes feeling lost, the necessity of all of that, the necessity of stuckness, time in Ireland, and all those poems. And the whole thing is a companion piece. It's not a deep, intractable piece of philosophy and mysticism like the first one was. It's a physician, it's a companion, a guide that people can reach for at any time with beautiful, encouraging life advice and perspective. And then there's a ton of writing that I'm doing at the moment on Substack, which people can easily find by going to my website, roccojarman.com or eyeswideopenlife.org. And I know you were busy for about 3-4 months rebuilding the walled garden. Can you hit us about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we'll. That was the result of both of us seeing major website issues and then saying, this is the moment we knew was coming where we have to throw it all away and build again.
What a
And
spiritual
in
exercise,
that threshing, yeah, seriously. I mean, everything is right from this perspective. It's
but
just
dude, you spent years building that.
Yeah, yeah. And it was such a blessing to actually step back and say, okay, we're starting again.
Okay.
Completely new website, and it's the home that we need for now. Until
I want to have a separate episode on my podcast, and I want to interview you actually and talk about not just what transpired, but what you've done and the parallel spiritual journey that would have been playing out, of what it feels like to take your work and realize you can't keep patchworking and remediating, and because that's what we do in the world, and eventually pulling the plug and going, fuck it, and then committing yourself in the dark to just going rebuilding the whole thing, but learning so much in the process. And I think that actually deserves a whole hour discussion. So maybe we can do that next week.
Yeah.
Let's do that next week, and I'll go into interviewer mode, because I'd love to hit you with guiding questions around that, because I think there's a lot of wisdom that can come out of that exercise. But it's looking so good, man. Thewalledgarden.com.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Wow. It's looking so slick.
Yeah. And there's one feature that is, I'll speak to you afterwards, but it's like, that there's one little bit that is still, my mind is holding on to, and then it's just,
what is it?
I think I know what I need to do. It's just,
what's the problem?
Well, are we done? I mean, with this?
Yeah, why don't you just give everybody the URL and how to find the walled garden, and what the gist of it is. Just remind everybody.
Now, just a question for you. This is your Zoom call.
Yeah. But we'll share the video.
Recording this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I looked at my record button and I was like, hang on, is this my Zoom? I was like,
you panicked that it wasn't being recorded at all.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. First, tell us where people can find the walled garden and why they might want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to thewalledgarden.com. Well, this is going to be on the Walled Garden podcast. People know. It's fine.
Yeah, but from my listeners. Because I'm releasing this too.
Okay.
Yes, you goose.
Oh, you're releasing this too. Okay, sure. So look, go to thewalledgarden.com. We've already said that multiple times, but why you might want to go there. The Walled Garden is this beautiful attempt by many philosophers of goodwill around the world, and I know many more to come, who believe that there is a better way, and who believe that philosophy is best practiced in community with other students who are serious about walking on the philosophical path and really want to understand and really want to get answers and really want to be healed and transformed, and philosophy is curative. It changes people's lives. It changes everything. It changes the way you see the world. It changes the way you act in the world. And so yeah, we're a collection of philosophers who really believe that it would be good if not only we could spread more beautiful philosophy and poetry and just wisdom out into the world, and to invite people not only just to consume it as if we are cows to the trough, but to actually come together and participate with each other and encourage each other and learn with each other in many, many different ways. And so you'll come to the website and you'll see, well, okay, I can go to this event where we're going to be discussing great books, or I can go to this event where we're going to be discussing poetry,
different speeds for different appetites.
Just different, all the various manifestations of, hey, I want to learn about philosophy, or I want to walk the philosophical path.
Do you remember in the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about these binary dichotomies that clash, and always looking for a transcendent perspective. Science and religion are intractable in many ways. And if there is any reconciliation between the two, the higher transcending perspective is philosophy.
Yeah.
I should have said science and spirituality, not science and religion, because I think religion is a distortion of what spirituality should and could be. You can't dogmatize spirituality. Anyway. Okay. Simon, I think we should call a natural close there.
Yeah. What a beautiful conversation. And Rocco, I love you, man.
I love you too, bro. I'm very excited. It's not the right word, but I'm very proud. It's not the right word either, but I'm something that's a mixture of excitement and pride and admiration for the courage you had to do that rebuild and the results of your effort. And I think both you and the Walled Garden grew like in step change orders of magnitude, in maturity, clarity, congruence, professionalism. It's quite a spectacular piece of work, and it's, as you say, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience to be on there. It's sometimes I go on a website and it comes at me, or it's hard to navigate, or it's not a net positive feeling. Everything about this is net positive.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the work is only beginning.
Yes, exactly. Our journey has just begun. I'm gonna wrap up there. Thank you so much. I hope this becomes a very useful artifact for listeners at Eyes Wide Open Life and the Walled Garden.
Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Walled Garden podcast. Before we head off, just a friendly reminder that we're hosting this event called Lighting Candles, a Vigil for Humanity, next Thursday, the 16th of November. You can find the event link, that's what I'm looking for, in the show notes for this episode, or you can just go to thewalledgarden.com/events. We would love to see you there. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Walled Garden podcast. In the Walled Garden Philosophical Society, we host regular events with world-class philosophers, theologians, poets, mystics, historians, and more on a broad range of topics. We also offer philosophical mentoring services for those who are in need of guidance on their own philosophical path. We'd love to see you around, so if you're interested in learning more, just go to thewalledgarden.com. But for now, we wish you well as you nurture the gardens of your mind.